Being married for a long time, it is quite difficult to maintain friendly relations because all the main time is spent on family. But I have the opposite situation. I have learned to keep a balance. When I went on another camping trip with my friends, I found out the terrible truth about my wife. And after that, I started my investigation. Some men are oblivious. I used to be one of them. Oblivious men should have a designated meeting place, a place where we can gather, have a few beers, and embrace our cluelessness together. The problem is, we wouldn't even realize the meeting was intended for us. Mary and I tied the knot in our early 20s. We spent enough time together to raise 3 kids and even enjoyed occasional moments of fun in between pregnancies. I followed the advice from books, portraying myself as the faithful husband. As Allison left for college, I pondered what Mary would do with no kids at home. Turns out she started volunteering at the hospital. 3 days a week, she dedicated her time there. She rotated between shifts at the gift shop and the pediatric playroom, among possibly other places. We had a tight-knit group of friends formed while raising our children, and we still gathered monthly for barbecues or house parties. I grew particularly close to 3 other men in the group, mainly because of our shared love for fishing. 4 or 5 times a year, we'd embark on weekend fishing trips together. I used to believe our marriage was typical, similar to those of others around us. Children grown and gone, wives occupied with various activities, some employed while others not. Husbands settled into our careers, patiently awaiting retirement. During our fishing trips, we discussed these things, sometimes even delving into topics of relationships and intimacy. In May, the 4 of us embarked on a fishing excursion. As we sat in the boat, quietly observing the water where my fishing line disappeared beneath the surface, our conversation unfolded softly. It began with Jack recounting a visit to Stanford to see his son. His wife had discovered an empty condom wrapper in his room and was greatly distressed. Paul then shared a story about how he returned home after visiting their daughter in college, during which his wife mentioned that Kelly had confessed to her about bed activity with her boyfriend. We chuckled as he described the young man, always clad in tattered, unkempt clothing, in dire need of a shave, and perpetually slouching. For a while, Mike remained silent. Sensing his contemplation, I inquired, "Mike, what's on your mind? You seem lost in thought." I'm hesitant to speak up. If I'm mistaken, I might initiate something that could harm someone. And if I'm correct, it'll hurt us all. Did you witness something, or is it conjecture? I probed. After a pause, with no interruptions from the fishing, he finally confessed, "I saw your wife parking her car behind the Marriott." "Whose wife and when?" I pressed. "Yours. 3 weeks ago and the day before yesterday," he disclosed. Jack interjected, "Are you suggesting Nick's wife is being unfaithful? I can't confirm her actions. All I know is, I've spotted her at the Marriott twice in a month," Mike clarified. "What were you doing there?" Paul inquired. Mike shot him a look of disbelief. "I deliver supplies to the Marriott 3 times a week, along with every other hotel in the area." "Ah, right. Forgot about that," Paul conceded. My mind raced. Why would Mary visit the Marriott twice in a month? Could she be cheating on me? Despite the urge to rush home and investigate, I remained fishing with the group. Leaving would signify my belief that Mary was unfaithful. Upon returning to the city, I retrieved my car from Jack's place and headed home, only to find Mary absent upon my arrival. Sitting at the computer, I pondered ways to uncover her activities. Over the following 2 hours, I scoured the internet for clues, eventually ordering items that could aid my investigation, having them delivered to my office. When Mary returned, I began to flirt with her, although I encountered resistance to intimacy, citing a headache. This did not come as a surprise. For the next week, Mary and I went about our lives normally, although the underlying suspicions remained. I remained vigilant, looking for any hint of her actions. I even called her at various times, but everything seemed normal. On the night following the arrival of the first package, I was messing around in the garage, installing a GPS transmitter on her car, which allowed me to secretly track her movements from my laptop. The next day, when another package arrived, I installed it too, which gave me the opportunity to eavesdrop on conversations in her car. The following morning, Mary had no hospital duties and mentioned over breakfast that she might go shopping. I kept an eye on her activities from my office, observing her trip to the mall and then to the market. She returned home with her purchases by 1 in the afternoon. Around 1:40, she left again, driving south for 10 minutes, then east for another 10, before navigating until she arrived at the Marriott. I decided to leave my office and follow her to the Marriott. Within 5 minutes, I located her car and parked nearby, concealed but with a clear view of her vehicle. At 4:20, she exited the hotel and headed directly to her car. Just as she was pulling out, Alex White emerged from the same exit and exchanged a nod with her as she drove past him. Alex White. I was taken aback. He was married to one of the most attractive wives in our social circle. After he got into his car and drove off, I remained in the parking lot until my phone rang. Nick? Mary. You sound distant on the phone. Why not just say hello? Hello. What's your dinner preference? How about something daring? You, laid out on the table, with a hint of ranch dressing. Oops, no ranch dressing. Any other suggestions? Something light and healthy, like a salad or salmon. I tried to focus on sounding casual, diverting her attention from my real thoughts. Okay. What time will you be back? Just after 5. All right. See you then. She hung up. With a sudden idea, I parked and entered the Marriott. Spotting the daughter of one of my clients at the reception desk, I engaged in small talk for a few minutes before asking, I heard a friend might be staying here. Could you check for me? Of course. What's his name? Alex. Alex White. Her fingers swiftly tapped on the keyboard, and moments later she responded. He's assigned to room 188 as usual. As usual. Every Thursday morning he checks in and leaves the next morning. Room 188 is his regular choice. Occasionally he stays on other days too, but Thursdays are consistent. Can the computer track how long this pattern has been going on? More tapping followed, and she replied, It started in January. Would it cause any trouble if you printed out his record for me? No one would know I did it. Is there something suspicious? Let's just say he's been visiting town more frequently than his friends are aware of. Do you want the printout? Yes, please. She handed it over in a Marriott folder. I wasn't certain of its immediate utility, but I sensed it would prove valuable. I placed it in my briefcase and drove back home. When I arrived, Mary had prepared a salmon salad. We ate together, and she recounted her day of shopping. According to her account, she was at the mall until 3, then made a stop at the market on her way home. As she narrated, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was deceiving me. Excusing myself, I went to the bathroom. While there, I noticed the shower was wet, and there were clothes in the hamper. I was infuriated. How could Mary have been having an affair with Alex for months? Clearly, she wasn't intimate with me. After we finished dinner, she settled onto the couch with a book while I retreated to the computer. Browsing through our social circle, I came across Alex's wife's email addresses, one for home and one for the office. Using a different email account, I sent a message to her office address. Answering it appeared unfamiliar. My message was straightforward. If you want to know who, when, and where, Alex is cheating on you, reply to this email. I possess evidence that might interest you. I'm not seeking any financial gain. I hit send at 8:10. By 9, her response awaited me. I'm available almost any time tomorrow. I'll be showing a new home at 1212 Oak Saint in Claremont for most of the day. Feel free to drop by around 1 and we can have lunch then. Alternatively, drop in whenever the house is open, and if there's no one else around, we can talk. Afterward, I deleted both her email and mine before heading to bed. I was already asleep when Mary joined me. In the morning, Mary was cheerful and preparing for her day at the hospital. I got ready for work as usual, and at noon, I called Mary. Can I handle dinner tonight? I asked. Are you going to cook? She replied. Is there something specific you'd like me to make? I inquired. Jambalaya, she exclaimed. Then jambalaya it is, I promised. After confirming Mary's location via GPS at the hospital, I left my office. On the way, I passed Alex's office just as he and two other men entered a deli. I quickly parked, discreetly installed another GPS tracker on Alex's car, and then headed to a sandwich shop. I ordered a sandwich for myself and a salad for Alex's wife. By 1 o'clock, I parked near the open house sign and made my way there. When Helen spotted me, her expression turned pale. She promptly got up from the couch, placed a sign outside indicating she'd be back at 2, and returned indoors. We were seated on the couch. Her eyes brimmed with tears, and she seemed on the verge of breaking down if she spoke. Suddenly, I felt the same fear creeping over me. I reached into my briefcase and retrieved the Marriott papers, passing them to her. As she scanned them, tears began to stream down her face. In a hushed tone, I uttered, "I'm so sorry." She glanced up at me, her expression pained, and confessed, "This jerk cheated on me for months. He's been having an affair with my wife, Mary, at least for a part of that time." "I'm so sorry," I repeated. She paused, blowing her nose before declaring, "He's in big trouble." "That document doesn't prove anything. We need concrete evidence, and we must be prepared for what comes next." "Absolutely. I tend to act impulsively. We need a solid plan." An hour later, Helen removed the lunch sign, and we continued our discussion until nearly 4. No one showed up for the open house, but we had a plan by the time I departed. That evening, I browsed the internet and stumbled upon a conference in Las Vegas, tailored to professionals in my industry, as well as another one for real estate agents. I promptly shared the details with Helen, who enthusiastically agreed that we should attend. After securing my reservation, I informed Mary about the conference, emphasizing the networking opportunities it presented. I extended the invitation to her, and though she expressed interest, she wanted time to ponder over it and promised to give me an answer the next morning. Meanwhile, Helen waited until Alex returned home to inform him about the conference she intended to participate in and invited him along. Unfortunately, he had to decline due to his heavy workload. The following day, Mary phoned me at work to express her reluctance about spending 3 days and nights in Vegas, coupled with the long drive. Instead, she contemplated visiting her sister. Though I tried to hide my disappointment, we didn't discuss the trip any further. At my office the next day, I reached out to Henry Hawkins, my business attorney, to ensure there were no conflicts of interest with Mary, personally or professionally. Following that confirmation, we delved into the potential ramifications of a divorce, and I diligently recorded our discussion in a computer file. I discussed the division of family assets with him and expressed concerns about protecting myself from unfair treatment. He initiated a plan to safeguard both me and my assets. Additionally, he arranged for someone to gather evidence of their affair. At 4 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Helen calling from a payphone. She had reservations at the Mirage while I was at Treasure Island. She mentioned what she needed to bring, and I advised her to bring her laptop, personal phone book, and a cell phone usable in Vegas without incurring exorbitant charges. Later that evening, I packed my bags. Mary entered as I was finishing and inspected my suitcase. "You forgot a swimsuit." "I'm not going on vacation." "A swim might be refreshing with your contacts," she suggested. I packed my swimming attire. She didn't add anything further. Once I finished packing, I placed the suitcase in the trunk of my car and, after my usual nighttime routine, went to bed. I suggested to Mary that she join me for some pre-trip fun in bed, but she seemed a bit fatigued. "Perhaps when you return," she replied, smiling. Before sunrise, I was already on the road. My cell phone rang at 7:30 and I picked up. It was Helen. "Where are you?" she inquired. "Almost to Pomona," I replied. "Do you remember there's a Denny's where we usually stop off to go to the fair?" she reminded me. "Yes, it's about 2 miles ahead," I confirmed. "Exit there and I'll meet you in 20 minutes. Sound good?" "Sure. I'm hungry. Should I order for you?" I offered. "No, I'll wait. You go ahead and start," she declined. I exited the freeway and parked at Denny's. Shortly after, Helen arrived, dressed in jeans, a loose Western shirt and Western boots, quite different from my expectations. She greeted me with a smile and sat down. The waitress promptly handed her a menu and coffee. After she took our orders, I couldn't help but notice how different Helen seemed from the professional woman I was accustomed to seeing. Even at parties, she typically dressed as though she were either heading to or coming from an open house. After finishing our meal, Helen expressed her disdain for the prospect of driving to Las Vegas solo. I suggested she follow me, offering a solution. She agreed, trailing behind me to a nearby parking structure. Upon arrival, I inquired about the cost of parking for 3 days, finding it reasonable. We both entered, parked side by side, and I transferred her belongings into my car, leaving hers there. With neither of us needing to drive alone, we embarked on our journey. For the next 3.5 hours, we discussed strategies while I drove and she took notes. In Baker, we refueled and took a brief respite. Our initial connection stemmed from both experiencing infidelity in our marriages, but now we were forging a friendship. I found myself drawn to her, despite never truly getting to know her before. Throughout the trip, we shared moments of laughter, sadness, and camaraderie. I dropped her off at her hotel in Las Vegas before heading to mine. We arranged a time and place to meet for dinner. Back in my room, I called my lawyer, who chuckled. "It looks like you can go back now. Your wife went to her lover's house and they took a dip in the pool in his backyard. We have a video of them engaging in compromising activities. There's even today's issue of Time magazine on the table next to them." "Let's get things moving then. Should I have his wife reach out to you?" "Interestingly, she already has. With both of you hiring me, I can save you both a lot of money." "Thanks. Can I ask a hypothetical question?" "Of course. What happens to the case if Helen and I decide to be together while we're in Vegas?" "Unless your wife or Alex is keeping tabs on you, nothing. We'll mess up both rooms. Do you want her served or him served before you return?" "No. I want to be there to change the locks before she's served. And I'd like a restraining order to keep her away from my business and the house if possible." "When do you need everything ready?" "I'll discuss it with Helen and get back to you." An hour later, I arrived at Caesar's and found the restaurant Helen had chosen. We sat down, talked, and enjoyed our meal. I used my mobile phone to call our lawyer. "Refrain from any action until we return. In the meantime, ask your man to gather more evidence while we're gone. It's better to have a lot of evidence when less is enough." After finishing the conversation, we paid the bill and walked around the shopping district together, never making physical contact, although I really wanted to. The image of Mary, who cheated on me while I wasn't around, wouldn't leave my mind. Helen mentioned that she was feeling tired, so we headed to the taxi stand and she headed back to her hotel. Just before she got into the taxi, I felt her desire to kiss me, and I reciprocated, but we refrained. 30 minutes later, when I entered my room, the phone rang. It was Mary. "It's getting late. Where have you been?" "I had dinner at Caesar's and then took a walk. I noticed one charming outfit that I think you'll like. Should I buy them?" "Open clothes? You know I rarely dress provocatively. For God's sake, I'm almost 50. "So it's a no?" "That's right. But if you can find a beautiful necklace or some other jewelry, I would appreciate it." "Okay, I'll look at it tomorrow. In the meantime, I turn off my mobile and go to sleep. Good night, Mary. I love you. Have pleasant dreams. Good night." She never said she loved me. After showering and shaving, preparing for bed, I settled onto the mattress to switch off my phone for the night when it suddenly rang. "Hello." "Open the door," I complied, and Helen entered, closing it firmly behind her. I stood there wrapped in a towel, while she remained clad in jeans and a Western shirt. "Alex is home," not giving me a second thought. "He's with your wife, in my bed." I mulled over that during the taxi ride to my hotel. Made it all the way to my room. Requested no disturbances for the night from the front desk. Messed up the bed, then came straight here. She smiled and hugged me. Then I decided to ask, "Are you here with me for revenge?" She replied, "At first I wanted to be with you because they betrayed us. But now that's not the case. Alex ended our marriage. I could wallow in sadness for a year or two, playing the victim, drowning in self-pity and melancholic songs on the radio. Or I could change my life, accept it the way I like it better. I want you to be here with me in bed, but please don't bother me so that we don't have intimacy. No? No. Share with me. Love me. But please, let's not do this. At least not yet." "Tell me what you like," I asked, putting my arm around her shoulders. "I like being loved and taken care of," she replied. "I will do my best. Let's start with the shower." We were both on our feet and had been traveling for several hours. We went to the bathroom and I turned on the shower again. We took turns taking a shower and kissing during it, and then went to bed. "Helen, I want us to lie down, hug, and fall asleep with our arms around each other." Helen took my face in her hands. A tear rolled down her cheek. We kissed slowly, and then she got into bed, making room for me next to her. She made herself comfortable and hugged me. I kissed her once, and we fell asleep. When I opened my eyes, she leaned in and kissed me. I totally didn't expect it, but we became intimate, and she was the initiator, and I didn't resist. After that, we felt like we had spent all our energy, so we decided to get some more sleep. When we got up, it was almost noon. We took a shower, got dressed, and went to Helen's room. She needed fresh clothes. While she was changing, I called our lawyer. He informed us that Alex and Mary spent the night in Mary's bed, and the photographer had pictures of our backyard, bedroom, living room, and my computer desk. I thanked him and said that would be enough. Helen and I got into my car, and I drove towards Lake Mead. We talked a lot. Our thoughts and words were angry, then sad, then hurt, and by the time we were in Kingman, Arizona, I was just sad. Our conversation made me realize that Mary and I had stopped loving and caring for each other a long time ago. We both loved our children, but not each other. Helen came to the same conclusion about her relationship with Alex. We stayed in Kingman long enough to have dinner and then headed back to Las Vegas. Time passed, and we didn't notice. We talked about our lives, we talked about what we want for the next few years. We talked about what our children will be like after our divorces. Returning to the hotel, I packed my things and loaded the suitcase into the car. I checked out of the hotel and moved into Helen's room. We simply lay in bed, and she cried. My character John Wayne didn't want me to cry, but I was close to tears anyway. Typically, in my past with Mary, we spent time in bed seeking quick pleasure. In bed with Helen, I found pleasure just in her presence beside me. I had never felt such emotions before. The next morning, we were intimate again, and as before, we decided to take a little nap. After our short nap, we ordered food and drinks to the room and were ready to head back, exchanging glances and kisses the whole time. When we were in the parking lot where Helen's car was parked, she asked, "What now?" "I'm curious about that, too. I don't want to sleep in the same bed as Alex. I want to be with you." "Let's switch then." She sat down, looked at me like I was crazy, and said, "What?" "I want to wake up with you. You just said you want me to be with you. Obviously, Alex and Mary have been practicing this for a while, so what's stopping us? Let's make it happen." "Seriously?" "Damn right. Then we don't have to be angry, feel abandoned, hurt, or anything like that. They can get what they want, and I'll win." "You won?" "Waking up with you every morning. That's a win. Living with you, that's a win. What if Alex is just fooling around with Mary and doesn't actually want to live with her? Then they get exactly what they deserve, nothing. They've deprived themselves of two good people, their homes, their families. A little honesty would be better. I need to think." "All right. Come to my office, we'll meet there. Do you have enough time to think?" "Let me clarify. You want us, you and I, to live together. You want all four of us to get divorced, right?" "Helen, all four of us are getting divorced. The day after the divorce is finalized, I want to marry you. Will you marry me?" "Too soon. We barely know each other." "Nonsense. We've known each other for years. We've been available even to consider love for just a few days. I can commit to loving you right now. I really do love you. Nick, think about it on your way to my office. Be careful. Be safe. I opened the door of her car and kissed her. The kiss was full of promises I was ready to make. She laid a towel on the seat and sat down. As she drove away, I wondered if she would come to my office, if she would say yes, and I wondered where I would sleep that night. Helen stood by her car when I pulled into the parking lot. When I parked, she opened my door and somehow squeezed herself between my stomach and the steering wheel. Yes, yes, I love you. Yes, I want to wake up with you every morning. Yes, I will marry you. She paused and filled the time with kisses. What do we do next? We need to talk to our spouses. Let me check the GPS and see where they are. Both trackers showed they were at Helen's house. Get in. We'll drive to your home. In 10 minutes, we pulled onto the driveway behind Mary's car. We quietly entered through the back door and heard sounds that didn't need explaining. We walked through the house until we spotted them on the floor in the living room. Right there, Mary was cheating on me. They were both on the floor and didn't even notice me. I gestured for Helen to sit on the couch, and I sat down next to her. Helen wasn't looking. All of this was accompanied by various words, and the sight was far from pleasant. After a few minutes, they finished fooling around, and at that moment, Alex spotted us. "Oh, damn!" he exclaimed. Mary looked, saw us, and froze. Seconds passed, and Helen said, "You're staining my carpet." Mary began frantically searching for her clothes. Alex was still lying on the floor, watching us. I said, "Maybe you need a few minutes to get ready and get dressed?" "Oh my God, Nick, I'm so sorry. We didn't want this to happen." The words came out of her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. "We'll talk when you've cleaned up and changed." "Keep going," I said. They got up and left the living room. We gathered up their clothes, and I carried them down the hall to the bathroom. Back in the living room, Helen was wiping a stain on the carpet. "It's up to you," I said. "What?" "Which house will we live in? Do you want to stay here or at my place?" "Why should I choose?" "Because they are to blame. They betrayed us. We choose." Before she could answer, Alex and Mary entered the room. I pointed to the other sofa, and they sat down at opposite ends. Helen gave in, came over and sat next to me on the couch. Alex began to speak, but Helen interrupted him with a raised hand, causing him to fall silent. She turned her gaze towards me. I inquired, "Alex, do you have genuine feelings for my wife? Or is this purely physical?" After a prolonged pause, Alex lowered his gaze before meeting Mary's eyes and admitted, "I believe I love her." Turning to Mary, I asked, "And what about you? Do you love Alex?" Mary's response was swift. "Yes." "If circumstances were different, would you two consider living together?" Alex hesitated before stating, "I don't want our marriage to end." "So you seek my approval to continue your affair with my wife? Do you expect Helen to clean up after your indiscretions on her own carpet?" I questioned sharply. "I never intended for you to find out. I didn't want anyone to get hurt. I want to salvage my marriage," Alex confessed. "Would it be acceptable to you if I engaged in an extramarital affair?" Helen's tone was icy, dripping with controlled anger. "No, you're my wife," Alex protested, wide-eyed. "And how would you feel if I were to engage in relations with Helen right here on your living room carpet?" I pressed. "No, this isn't how it's supposed to be. Wait, are you involved with my wife?" Alex exclaimed in disbelief. "No, I have never been involved with Helen. But perhaps it would offer some semblance of fairness if we were to engage in such an act while the two of you observed. Then maybe you would understand the emotional impact of being betrayed," I suggested. "Nick, I'm deeply sorry. I never intended to cause you pain," Mary uttered, her voice muffled by the tissue pressed against her face. "You've caused me pain. The proof shows you deliberately planned and visited the Marriott at least 20 times to engage in extramarital affairs," accused Alex. "Alex, you have 5 minutes to pack a suitcase." In 6 minutes, I expect you out the door. Contact my lawyer for arrangements to retrieve the rest of your belongings," ordered Helen, glancing at her watch. Alex remained motionless. "Mary, once I leave here, I'm heading to our home. You have 5 minutes to gather your things and leave when you arrive. Contact my lawyer for further arrangements. If either of you return without going through the lawyer, I'll distribute the incriminating photos to everyone, including the kids," Helen warned. 4 minutes, Helen reminded. Alex hurriedly complied, disappearing into the bedroom. Helen counted down. As she reached 1 minute, I approached the bedroom door. "You don't want to be here when time's up," I shouted. Alex swiftly packed and fled without a word to Helen or Mary. "Mary, leave now." "Helen, lock up once we're gone. If Alex returns, call me, and the photos will be online before he can enter," I instructed. "Be careful. We don't know what Alex might do," cautioned Helen. I followed Mary when she left the house, and she followed my car to our house. Holding the door open, I led her inside. Tears were streaming down her face. Once inside the house, she collapsed into a chair in the kitchen, shaking with sobs. "I'm really sorry, Nick." "Good. That's how it should be. You started dating Alex in January and ended your bedtime relationship with me. Am I inadequate? Weren't you satisfied with me?" "No, I just felt special with Alex. I don't think you need me. It seems that the children don't need me. You're handling everything here. Alex made me feel special. He didn't even say goodbye when he left. He doesn't want a divorce. It means he doesn't want to be with you. You were just a convenient option for him. Do you understand who that makes you?" She looked at me, and I gave her the answer. "A woman of easy virtue, a morally bankrupt woman who can stay alone. I hope it was worth it. It cost you your marriage, your home, your future with me, and maybe even your children." Mary continued to sit, tears still streaming down her cheeks. I took a Diet Coke out of the fridge and sat down across from her. As soon as her tears subsided, I looked at my watch and said, "You have the promised 5 minutes. They start now." After setting the timer on the oven, I added, "When everything works out, you shouldn't be here." 20 seconds later, the door closed behind her. I watched as she loaded 2 suitcases into her car and drove away, followed by Alex's car. In my office, I turned on the surveillance monitor and noticed that they were both parked 2 blocks away from me. I turned on the audio transmission and heard the car door open, and then I heard the sounds of Alex getting into it. Mary's crying could be heard. "They won't actually divorce us," Alex assured. "He's getting divorced. He will never take me back. I used to be a good wife, but now I'm just nobody. I'm nobody. You did this to me. What are you going to do? You see? You don't even ask what we're going to do. We got caught and now you're leaving me. You're a jerk. If I could, I would send these photos to your children, not mine. But I won't do it because I can't bear the thought of my children seeing me with you, with the one who ruined my marriage." She sobbed, and after a few moments, I heard the car door open and close. The muffled sound of a car starting and driving away reached my ears. I turned off the sound. My napkin box was empty. I was filled with anger and resentment, but I still couldn't bear to see Mary in such pain. In the garage, I came across a set of locks I had purchased a few years ago but never got around to installing. After installing them, Mary's keys no longer fit my house. I phoned Helen. "How are you?" I inquired. "That stings. Are you returning here?" "Yes. When Mary left, Alex encountered her and spoke with her. Then he deserted her. Currently, he's headed towards your place. I'm leaving my place, so it won't take more than 10 minutes to get there. Call my cell if he approaches. All right?" "Got it. Alex is even worse than I thought. He just left her. He wants you and the freedom to fool around. Mary was just a fling to him. Damn him. He's not re-entering my life. Not now, not ever. Hang tight. I'll be there soon. I love you. I love you too." The line went silent. I adhered to the speed limits and parked in the driveway. Alex's vehicle was positioned by the curb. He stood conversing on the porch. As I shut the car door, he halted and turned towards me. "Let me speak with Helen. She's my spouse." "No, she used to be your spouse. You heard me warn you not to return, yet here you are. Remember what I said I would do. Don't do it. I just want to have a conversation with her. It's too late. When I spotted you here, I sent out the photographs. I had over 100. I dispatched some to your children, some to our acquaintances, some to the newspaper. Each one I sent bears your visage. Conversing with Helen won't salvage your marriage. Come Monday, you'll be served with divorce papers. Congratulations, you sought pleasure, and you got far more than you bargained for. Alex turned to me, ignoring the fact that a police car had quietly pulled up and parked 2 houses away from me. However, I noticed it. Keeping a motionless and harmless pose, I watched as Alex came down from the porch and rushed at me. His hard blow landed on my chest, causing me to fall. Before he could strike again, 2 policemen quickly intervened and grabbed him. "I'll find you!" he shouted. The police quickly handcuffed Alex and escorted him to the back seat of their car. Helen showed up and we had a brief conversation with the police, while Alex continued to shout threats while in the car. As soon as the police left, we returned to the premises. "Did you really send these photos?" "No. It would only hurt Alex. Next weekend, my children are supposed to come to visit for their mother's birthday. If they ask about the photos, I will be reluctant to share them. However, I hope they won't want to see them. Watching Alex's indiscreet behavior with Mary was almost unbearable for me. I wouldn't want our children to find out about this." Deep down, I wanted to open the door. "Really? Why didn't you do it?" As I listened to him, he talked about how I would end up alone, how much I needed him, and how irreplaceable he was. There was no word of love for me, for the children, or even for our family. The part of me that hesitated to open the door was the part that clung to the hope of curing him. "You didn't open the door?" "No. I saw your car and realized that Alex was wrong. I've realized something in the last 4 days. I'm not going to be alone. I don't need him. There is a man who loves me and he likes to love me. There is a man who has loved my children for many years. You were their football coach, not Alex. You went hiking with us. You replaced the water heater when it was leaking." I was standing at the door, and when I realized Alex was getting angry, I called the police. I talked to them and explained what was going on. I told them he could get violent. I saw them drive up to the entrance. I was afraid he would hurt you. He did it. When he hit me, it hurt a lot. I wonder if you could kiss me to make me feel better. Oh, what a great idea. Maybe we should go to the bedroom so I can comfort you. I hugged her, she hugged me back, and we went into the bedroom. The room was not what I expected. The bed is not made, there are no rugs on the floor, it was completely empty. We spent the evening in bed, cuddling, kissing, and all that jazz. After a while, following the sunrise, my mobile phone rang. Simultaneously, Helen's phone rang too. Helen answered from the bed. I dashed into the hallway and picked up. "It's Nick." "Dad, what's going on?" It was Todd, my eldest. "What do you mean?" "I called Mom this morning about our visit this weekend. She started crying and told me to call you. Then she hung up and isn't answering now. How soon can the 3 of you get back home?" "We can be there tonight if needed." "What's happening?" "I can't discuss this over the phone. Call me back and let me know how you'll get here. If you fly, I'll meet you at the airport. If you drive, let me know when you'll be home." "You're not telling me over the phone, right?" "No. Sorry for making you wait, but I think it's best this way." After ending the call, I glanced into the bedroom to find Helen looking pale and motionless as she spoke on the phone. Catching sight of me, she signaled for me to join her. She paused her conversation momentarily, covering the receiver to whisper, "It's Carol. Her dad rang her from jail last night, asking for help with bail. She's seeking updates. Find out how soon they can return. We need a family meeting urgently. My kids will be back tonight. Let's gather at my place and break the news altogether. Alex will still be detained, and Mary's whereabouts are unknown." Revealing the phone again, Helen instructed her daughter to head home and fetch her brother, assuring they'd be contacted when nearing. They were to drive to my house for our meeting. Carol bombarded with questions, to which Helen simply promised answers when we convened. I reached out to our attorney, arranging for the delivery of photos and briefing him on the assault and our future strategy. He endorsed our plan and pledged to deliver the photos personally. We dressed and began our tasks. I purchased packing boxes and organized Alex's belongings into them, stacking them in the garage. Helen located a spare key for his car, and we stored it in the garage as well. Calls to Helen's phone were forwarded to mine, and then we headed to my house. Inside, I started packing my own items while Helen wandered through the house, occasionally consulting me. "Do you think the lazy boy should go to our place or stay here? Will it fit in your house? It would look great in the family room. Alex's is going. Let's take it." When the phone rang, I checked the caller ID and passed it to Helen. It was Carol saying she was an hour away. Helen thanked her and hung up. Shortly after, my kids called, saying they'd arrive in an hour. Helen decided to order pizza and salad for delivery, and she placed the order. I continued packing my clothes and other belongings, needing to stay occupied. I emerged from my bedroom to find Helen standing by the front window. I approached her and embraced her. There will be tears and anger. Even if it seems like they're directed at us, they're not. It's a mix of disappointment, hurt, and feeling betrayed. Remind yourself that we haven't done anything wrong, and remind yourself that I love you. I couldn't go through this without you. Yes, you could and you would. Hopefully, having me here makes it a little easier. She turned to kiss me just as my daughter's car pulled into the driveway. We noticed the pizza delivery arriving at the same time. "I'll set the table," Helen said as she hurried to the kitchen. I opened the front door. My son, Todd, helped bring the food inside, and I paid the delivery person. He glanced around, seeing Helen but not his mother. "Where's Mom?" "I don't know." Helen's children arrived, and I welcomed them in. They also began asking questions. I raised my hand, and when they all quieted down, I said, "The food can wait. Let's all gather in the living room, and we'll explain." Helen's children occupied one couch while mine settled on the other. I gestured for Helen to take the big chair, while I fetched a chair from the kitchen for myself. Before I could sit, there was a knock at the door. It was Henry Hawkins, my lawyer, who handed me a thick envelope. Taking note of all the kids in the living room, he whispered, "Good luck. Do you need me to stay?" "No, but thanks," I replied. After closing the door, I took my seat. Rather than fielding individual questions, let me tell you the story first. Then feel free to ask anything. Sound good? With no one moving, I began. A week ago, I was fishing with friends. One of them mentioned that he saw Mary in the afternoon at the Marriott Hotel. Puzzled, I decided to track her car with a GPS. 2 days later, she returned to the Marriott. 3 hours after her departure, Alex White, Helen's husband, exited the same door. Investigating further, I obtained hotel records for Alex, revealing he had rented the same room periodically since last January. All the kids exchanged glances, and Alex's son remarked, "That doesn't necessarily mean they were cheating." The others nodded in agreement. "You're correct. I hired someone to investigate, hoping there was no affair. I also spoke to Helen, hoping she might have insight into why Alex was at the Marriott. Our lawyer suggested we leave town for a few days to ascertain what was truly happening." Helen interjected, "I went to the Mirage in Las Vegas, and Nick went to the Treasure Island." The next day, when I talked to the lawyer, he mentioned that he had pictures of Alex and Mary. "Are these photos inside the envelope?" Carol asked, pointing to the envelope at my feet. "Yeah. Helen and I have postponed our return for another day. This is absolutely disgusting." When we returned, they were at Helen's house. We caught them at the scene of the crime. We asked if they wanted to get divorced to be together. Alex refused, while Mary agreed. We let them collect some personal items and then escorted them both out. I haven't seen or heard from Mary since. Helen contacted me because Alex came back and threatened her from the porch. She also called the police, and when Alex attacked me and threatened both of us, the police arrested him. As far as I know, he is still in prison. The interrogation commenced. "Are you getting a divorce?" We both affirmed. "Have you seen the pictures?" "No. We witnessed them cheating on us in your mother's living room. Viewing the pictures isn't necessary. They're for legal purposes, if required." "Is Dad going to prison?" He assaulted me and threatened your mother in the presence of 2 police officers. I suspect he'll serve time for that. Mom, how long did you know Dad was being unfaithful? I found out when Nick revealed the hotel records. He was using our retirement funds to book a room at the Marriott. Wow, Carol exclaimed. The others nodded in agreement. What comes next? Things will change. I'm putting this house on the market. I don't need such a big house anymore. Mom, I don't want to relocate. I've been considering getting a roommate. Mom, are you and Nick romantically involved? While we were in Las Vegas, we spent a lot of time together, talking and getting to know each other. When we returned, I decided to pursue a relationship with Helen. I proposed to her. Before we found out about our spouse's infidelity, we had never even kissed. But now I am proud to call Nick my partner and soon-to-be husband. We hope you can come to terms with everything you've learned. We love each of you. For a long time, there was silence in the room. Eventually, Carol got up and came over to me. She knelt down and picked up the envelope. I don't want to look at these photos, but I feel like I have to do it. I don't want to believe this story, but if the photos confirm it, I will have to, she said. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope and looked inside. She looked at only one photo without taking it out of the envelope. That scoundrel, she exclaimed, closing the envelope. Handing it to me, she added, You should tell him what you think of him. I was tempted, of course, I replied. Then Helen's son came over and took the envelope. I need to see this, he said. He reached inside and pulled out about 10 photographs. He silently scanned each photo before putting it back into the envelope. Later, we got rid of the half-eaten pizza and salads. By 9 o'clock, we went to a Chinese restaurant and had dinner there. Despite all the upheavals, the children, who had been friends all their lives, got used to the idea that they were part of the same family. Just before the fortune cookies arrived, my son Matt asked, Can we go camping this summer? Helen smiled and replied, Some of my happiest memories from when you were all little were the hikes we did together. For a moment, I fell silent as Carol, Helen's daughter, gazed at me and asked, Can we, Dad? Can we? Tears streamed down my face. How had she embraced me so quickly? How could I refuse? They all echoed her sentiment. Can we, Dad? Can we? Of course. That sounds great. Let's check our calendars and pick a date. As we left the restaurant, our first family camping trip was set. The pain lingered. The disappointment remained. But ahead lay the blueprint for a brighter future. That was 4 years ago. Mary never showed up in court, and no one has heard from her since. The day after she talked to the kids on the phone, she took a cash advance on her credit card and vanished. Alex is serving 8 1/3 to 15 years in prison. None of his children have visited him. I've never opened the envelope. It's tucked away in our home safe. We still go camping together as a family once a year. Some men just don't get it. Alex could have kept the house, his job, and Mary. I wonder if he ever thinks about that.